higher powers of I. Now, in the last lesson, I already talked about, well, this is just like x here. X of the first is x, just like 3 of the first is 3, 4 of the first is 4. Last lesson, I talked about how I squared is negative 1. Now, the way anything beyond this works, what I'm doing off to the side here, you do not have to be able to do. I am showing you where this comes from. If you ever forget the key that I'm going to put over here, this is how you would come up with it if you forget. But you don't have to be able to do this if you can memorize the key I'm going to write over here. If I want I to the third, what I can do to get I to the third, multiply both sides by I. Whatever I do to one side, I got to do the other. This gives me I to the third, because I to the first times I to the second, I to the third. Negative 1 times I is negative I. So this is our key on the left here. Now for I to the fourth, I'm going to start with I squared again, just because this is easier than using I cubed. And again, you don't have to be able to do this. I'm just showing you where my stuff in the key is going to come from. I'm going to square this side, and whatever I do to one side, got to do to the other. Now what this does, when you raise a power to a power, you multiply, so that gives me I to the fourth. Negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1. Now, powers, exponents, mean how many times you multiply something by itself. So if we're talking about multiplication here, if I multiply by 1, it doesn't do anything. So every 4 powers of I don't matter. It's just 1. And if you multiply by 1, it does nothing. 1 times anything is just that anything. So if we think about it, take a look at some higher powers. If every 4 powers of I is 1, multiplying by 1 doesn't do anything, whatever's left over after is what's going to matter. So this is the key for that, because everything after the 4 powers, each 4 powers don't matter. So if we go beyond, it's like we're back to where we began. So if we're talking about what's left over after we take out factors of 4, multiples of 4, that's a remainder. Now, on a calculator, it doesn't even have to be a nice graphing calculator. Even the most basic calculators can do this. Let's think about dividing by 4. I don't know. Let's go 5 divided by 4. I get 1.25. 25 is a quarter. 25 cents is a quarter. Quarter is 1/4. So that's like a remainder of 1. Likewise, if I go 6 divided by 4, 0.5, 50 cents. 0.25 is 1/4. 0.50 is 2/4. So that's like a remainder of 2. 7 divided by 4, you can probably see where this is going. 0.75 is the remainder. That's like 3/4, remainder of 3. And Happens if I divide 8 by 4? I get a whole number. I get no remainder. That means that was a multiple of 4. So that would just be 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 for every multiple of 4. Multiplying by 1 doesn't really do anything. 1 times 1 times 1 times 1, still 1. So what we're going to do, we're going to use our key here. I'll transfer it over to the front. I to the first is I, just like x to the first is x. I squared is -1. I cubed is -I. I to the fourth is +1. This is our key. If you don't remember how to come up with it, just memorize it. So let's see what we're going to do. We want to find the remainder after division by 4. Oh, there is no remainder. So this is just I to the fourth, I to the fourth, I to the fourth, I to the fourth, a bunch of times till we hit 60. So that's just 1 from our key. 1 times 1 times 1 times 1, which is just 1. If it's a multiple of 4, meaning no remainder, the answer is 1. Now, I to the 21st, 21 divided by 4. Oh, 0.25, that's 1/4. So this right here is the same as I to the first, which is just I. And you can skip this. I'm just demonstrating what's going on here. 39. Well, let's see. 39 divided by 4, 0.75. That's like 3/4. So that's a remainder of 3. So this is the same as I cubed, I to the third, which we just said is -I. This right here is just showing what's going on. It's like the work. I to the 40th, 40 divided by 4. Oh, no remainder again. So that's just a bunch of I to the fourths with nothing left over. 1. Because 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 is still 1. 54 divided by 4. Oh, 50 cents is 2/4. So that's what's left over there. I squared, we just said over here, -1. And if you have to use it in the question, okay, let's see. 23 divided by 4. Oh, 75 cents is 3/4. So this is like I cubed right here. We said I cubed. Back up to our key is -I. $21 divided by 4. 1/4, 1/4. Remainder of 1. So this is like I to the first. We said I to the first, just like anything else, is just I. Tens, that's a plain old number. Let's see. 24 divided by 4. Oh, no remainder. So that's just 1. -I times 4 is -4I. So 10 minus 1 is 9. Technically, you should have your real number first, then your I. It doesn't really matter, though. -4 minus 4 more, 8I. So 20 plus, oh, hey, this one, we don't even have to do the remainder. That's just -1. Now, 45, 45th power, 45 divided by 4. Oh, 1/4. So this is like I to the first, because that's our remainder. I to the first is just I. And the last one, 33 divided by 4. Hey, a remainder of 1 again. So this is the same as I to the first, which is just I. 6 times -1 changes that to -6. That's just I to the first, works just like X. There we go. So what you do for high powers of I, just in case you weren't done with that. Divide by 4, just the exponent, just type it in like a regular number. That gives you the equivalent 1 from the key that you got to memorize. And then you just use what that's equal